Hey, Tracy, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Thank you. So I have been in sales for a little over 20 years. Started with Xerox back in the late 90s, and that's where I learned my sales acumen. My dad worked for Xerox for almost 40 years, and he was kind of my sales guru, go-to guy. So started hitting the pavement, cold calls. I mean, you name it, it was very Glengarry Glen Ross.
Yeah.
Um, Minus the suitcase or briefcase or whatever. And from there, I was with Xerox for about 5 years and then decided that I did not like that kind of sale. It was really a little too technical and quite boring to me. So I then found hospitality where I've been ever since. I've been all over, I've lived all over the country and worked for a lot of different chains, a lot of different brands. And most recently, out of COVID, lost my job in June, but was recently just rehired by Sage Hospitality, and I will be working for a local Hilton here in the Chicagoland area.
Cool. And what you like about hospitality?
I like that it's relationship based.
Yeah.
It is a sales cycle that, I think is more based on, the person that you're selling to is going to buy from you versus buying the product that you're selling, because hotels really are all the same. They're all four walls. So as long as, right? I mean, so as long as, the client likes you and trusts you and ensures that, you know what you're talking about, then to me, that's more rewarding than just, pushing a product.
And how did you build that up, that relationship?
It just really started with, kind of a Rolodex. It's who you know, it's referrals, it's repeat business, and it's being in one market long enough to be able to cultivate certain relationships. And, I found as I've kind of bounced all over the country that, I've got probably about 20% of the client base that has stayed with me from those various locations, which, now being in Chicago for the past 10 years, has really been beneficial. So, a lot of people well, we'll see how it is now post COVID, but used to come to Chicago for, programs all the time. So I'd be able to pull from those relationships and, generate new business or, create additional pipelines for, whatever hotel I was at the time.
Well, I mean, it is all four walls, but the location's critical.
It is. It depends on what kind of hotel you're selling.
Yeah.
So my background primarily downtown convention hotels, which in Chicago there are quite a few. So it depends if you want to be close to the convention center, if you want to be further away from the convention center. And if you're further away, why should we stay with you because you're further away? Why would my attendees want to, travel further? So it's, number one, knowing the client base that you're going to be selling to, and obviously knowing your product and knowing what benefits and features you have that will put you above your neighbor.
And were you typically middle of the market, high end, low end?
Pretty much high to mid.
Yeah.
So in Chicago, that kind of the high end, you have the Waldorfs and the Ritz Carltons, Park Hyatts, that sort of thing. My experiences, I've been at the Radisson Blue. These are all roughly 400 rooms and up with probably anywhere from 15 to 40,000 square feet of space. So, we can host in-house meetings as well. But most of the properties are mid to high range, 3 to 4 stars and up, and have a very specific kind of group or client that they tailor to, primarily a corporate client or
Yeah.
a business traveler client. So those are the hotels that I have found myself at over the last 10 years of being in the city.
And how could you tell when you had a good match with that client? Because I'm sure they look at two or three other hotels.
Sure. I have found over the years, it's really about making it personal. You don't jump out of the gate and start with, so what are your kids' names? What are your, you don't really start with that stuff. So you have to, it's really old school in the sense you have to listen.
Yeah.
You have to pick up on certain, you know, things that you hear, things that they say to be able to know them a little deeper. It doesn't help to do a little bit of stalking online, to be honest. You look them up on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever and Where did they go to school? Do they have kids? So, for example, if you have a client coming into town, say they're traveling from, somewhere, another state, and they're in for a site visit or in for a program, what I've done is, if they have children, printed off pictures of their children from, whatever I found online, frame those and put them in their room. That way, they feel like I'm at home, here are my kids, and wow, this team here went above and beyond to know a little bit about me. Maybe a little creepy, they found kids pictures of my kids, but they thought enough to put it in my room
Right.
and make
Yeah.
me, feel as home as possible in the setting I'm in. So stuff like that hits home, and it will make clients remember you for sure.
And how do you handle the thing? Because the person that gets assigned to work with you isn't the economic decision maker.
And you have to know who you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Obviously, the conversation with a meeting planner versus, say an executive director who has more of the financial aspect in mind, you have to tailor that conversation appropriately. So the meeting planner, their goal is to look like a rock star to that executive director. And that executive director, their goal is to retain memberships or, what grow revenue, whatever the case may be. And you kind of put that spin on it. So when I'm talking to the financial person, I'm going to speak more in terms of numbers and, how is this going to increase? What kind of ROI are you going to get out of it? And why is my hotel a good component for that? Versus, the meeting planner is, my behind the scenes team. This is why they are the best, because they're going to make you look like you're the best.
And how could you tell when you were, what we call column A versus column B or C? Because they're going to look at the market. They're all going to present to you like they're interested and try and negotiate, but they might have a favorite. They may be this brand or that brand or
What's key is when you have somebody that's looking at a slew of properties, and say you make the short list, so you've whittled, got yourself in that group of whittled down to 3 or 4 or whatever. A follow up is really what's important in that stage, and it's staying top of mind. So if the client went back home, let's send them something to their office. Let's, send them some Garrett's popcorn, because that's what everybody has to have when they come to Chicago is popcorn. So, we'll send them something from there. We will follow up, with a phone call, not just email, because that's to me so irritating. A phone call, make it
yeah,
personal,
yeah,
let them hear the voice. And obviously your price, I mean, if you're priced way out of the ballpark, then, but you need to know your competitive set to know where you sit within, those properties left, and why you're better. So, it's just, to me, staying top of mind. Don't, get complacent once you've made that short list and assume, oh, well, I think I'm the best, and of course I'll get chosen. Well, because that's not always the case. A lot of times you get side swiped, and you're like, what do you mean I didn't win? And then you're left wondering why. Well, because you didn't put your best foot forward. So
yeah. Because you can tell if they can afford you
mhm.
just by going online,
Yeah, pretty
right?
much. Yeah.
Y-
I mean, a lot of associations, they're nonprofit, so they don't like downtown hotels
Yeah,
necessarily because, in June our rates are sky high, and a lot of the properties are union, and that is a big turnoff to a lot of people. So, it's obviously, knowing your client and doing your homework on them to know, where have they been at the past? Okay, well, if you can see that they've been at, okay, they were at the Ritz, and then they were at the Gaylord, and then they were all these, high-end resort, then they probably, have the budget that can accommodate. But if they were at like the Super 8, and then they, were at like the
the YMCA. Yeah.
wherever, right, like, the Elks Lodge, then chances are that,
They're not going to go for
they're
it.
not going to come to you, and they're just doing you a, courtesy by, doing the search. So.
And what do you think was your strongest capability? What I call a superpower. Some people have, you can just read people. Other people get that bonding,
Mhm.
and
I can read people.
yeah,
It's, to me, everybody puts on one leg at a time. So at the end of the day, we are all governed by kind of the same motivating factor. To me, it's reading people. If somebody's having a bad day, I can sense it, and I'm not going to take it personal. I have developed tremendously thick skin over the years, and try them again tomorrow. Or maybe find out, why they had a bad day and try and make it better somehow. So the ability to either push forward or, pull back in sales to me is critical, because you don't want that used car salesman, no offense to anybody, mentality of push, 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 and somebody's like, okay, completely turned off, and then you're done.
And how about if you were column B? How do you get them to be column A when you know it's a good match? You're just as good, if not better.
I mean, literally, you pull out every stop possible. And to me, unless you've exhausted every effort and proven every point and put every, benefit to every need that they have, and, they could have a brother-in-law working at, the other property, and there's just no way you were ever going to win, but you don't know that. So at the end of the day, you have to do everything within your power, within your budget, or within your sales capability to ensure that you've done what you can to, appease the client, get the sale, try and close it. But there's some stop gaps that you're just never going to overcome, and
Right.
if they have strong relationships elsewhere, that's going to be one of them.
And have you ever found that where you go on LinkedIn and you find out,
Oh yeah.
their dad is a VP at Marriott or something?
Right. And you're like, okay, well, I can still do what I can, try and offer them an extraordinary amount of points, which a lot of times will sway people, because,
Yeah.
your VP father-in-law is not going to take you on vacation, but my points will. So, you do what you can, but, you know, some things you just can't overcome.
And how about as far as I'm sure they do a site visit?
Hmm.
Do they stay over typically, have dinner?
Sometimes, a lot of local clients, you want to try and get them in for a meal. Being downtown, a lot of people hate traveling downtown if
Yeah.
you don't already have an office down there. So, those people, you're never going to get in for a meal, because they want to get in and out before traffic, and they want to be home by 5 o'clock. Like, that's kind of how they operate. So, you have to work within that window. So with no meal, you pull out the red carpet, literally the red carpet when they arrive. You have your general manager and your entire executive team at the door waiting to meet them. You have, Shirley Temples and, champagne glasses, kind of white glove to them, and you pull out, every stop along the way for that, hour to 2 hour period that they're there. If you have a meal wrapped into it, then it's great to have, your general manager join you, or, bring in some other team members, usually the person that's going to operate the program, to answer more technical questions, because the salespeople by far will screw that up and promise things that they shouldn't. And so it's always good to have the realistic person there as well to answer things that, can or can't happen. But then personalize it, put their company's logo up in every room that you take them to go see. Make some personalized, giveaways to hand to them when they leave. So stuff like that. It really helps.
Yeah. Cool. And what do you think differentiates you as a rep? Or what have you learned? Because you went from Xerox, which was selling office equipment, I guess.
I started selling Xerox supplies, so anything
Yeah.
that went in or
Into
through the
supplies. Yeah.
machine. Then promoted up to, I sold high-end graphic art machines, which essentially were the ones that you see at your Kinkos, your, Staples, and sort of those high-end, high-volume products. And that clientele, you walk in, it's kind of like a dirty old man copy shop. You've got like two guys there running copy shop, like they've got the old bathing suit calendar on the wall, like what you're dealing with, so like that's a totally different sell than my
Yes.
corporate Pepsi client, who is like buttoned up and whatever. So I have learned to be very adaptable to my environments. I am very fair, but I'm very outspoken. And I think that has kind of set me apart from a lot of people, is that I will tell you like it is, no matter what. And you can count on that. I'm not going to sell somebody something that I know is not a good fit. just to get the sale, just because I need the revenue. And I'm fair. I'm relatable. I've got kids, I've got dogs, I've got a sloppy husband, whatever. So like I can relate to everybody. So it taught me over time, and really, to my dad he's the one that taught me, is that the people are people, and as long as you can talk the talk and back it up with what you're doing, then people will trust you and you'll have a client for life.
And on the hospitality side, you had the event planner, and how did you get the other people involved? Because the money, the
So
approvals.
so usually the way it works is you put out everything in a proposal, and the meeting planner, depending on if they have a meeting planning team in-house, or if it's just kind of, the hierarchy is really the meeting planner, and then the signer, sometimes the meeting planner is the signer. You find that out in the beginning. Like, well, that's probably one of the qualifying questions that you ask is, are you the contract signer? Because then at that point, I know, here's what I need to put into you, versus when I'm done, getting through you and selling you, then I need to sell
Yes.
XYZ or whoever.
Yeah.
So that's a key question to find out up front, to know what lies ahead and to be prepared for that. So a lot of times I've sold the meeting planner, but have had to go and present to a board or
Right.
present to an executive director. And, again, it's still the same spiel, but I'm going to tailor it, to the financial aspect of it, to the, what are you going to get out of this? And why is my hotel better than, whoever else you're looking at, in terms of helping you get to that goal?
Yeah. And do most of them just focus on price?
No,
No.
it's price is, obviously it's a huge part of it. However, it's kind of flow of the meeting. If it's a
Yeah.
large meeting, they want to make sure, number one, is it going to fit? Number two, is it going to accommodate people in terms of, getting from the room where they're going to eat their meals to then the next room where they're going to have their meetings, in a very seamless fashion. They don't
Right.
want people going up and down elevators and all over, so you want to make sure that the meeting has a nice flow. They want to make sure their audio visual is not going to crap out on them in the middle of everything, because that's disastrous. And they want to make sure the food's good. So if you can ensure those components, then, from a meeting planner's perspective, that's, those are their hot buttons, and that's what will make or break them. So if you can ensure those things, I mean, obviously nobody can guarantee anything, but that's why you always have your service person usually on the site with you, or, with you during that cycle, to help, ensure that those technical things will be taken care of.
And I guess there's probably two different financial strategies. One, you start high and chip away,
Mhm.
or you start low and chip up.
What's nice with hospitality is that you can add things. So like,
Yeah.
there's your price point, and I'm one that, I'll probably start at mid range if I know what their budget is with room rate. But you also have to factor in the price of food and beverage per person, and that kind of they will roll that into whatever the rate is. But then you can start throwing in things like suite upgrades. Like, so do you have VIPs?
Yeah.
I can upgrade all of them for free. It costs me nothing,
Right.
really, because the price to clean a
It's
hotel
empty
room is going to be
rooms.
the
Yeah.
same, right? Is it parking? Being downtown, parking is a huge thing.
Yeah.
So if you can comp parking, which is a hard cost to me, but if I can throw that in, that will definitely help. So I have all of these, things in the back pocket, so to say, that I can use to help, bump me up the scale in terms of, the concessions that I'm able to give them, that makes my entire, presentation a little bit more appealing.
And do you hold those back and yeah, and
Yeah,
kind of,
yeah. I am not going to give away the farm right at the beginning, no way, because then,
it's coming.
then you're left. Okay, so now we get to, okay, it's
Get
between
two
here and
presidential
here.
suites. Yeah.
Okay, well, I have nothing left to give you. I can't really helicopter you off the roof, so I don't know really what else there is, So yeah, you want to definitely hold back, and kind of start with the concessions that don't cost the hotel anything, and then move into those what we consider hard concessions that actually,
Do
will
cost.
incur out of pocket costs to us.
And how much does the personal win for the meeting planner, like the upgraded suite, The
You
free
know,
parking, the
that's the person you really, at the end of the day, of course, yeah, like we got to take care of our VIPs. Really, it comes down to points. They love the points because that's really the only thing they can personally take and do something with them that is not a part of their
the
company, where
business. Yeah.
it allows them to travel. And I mean, some of these people, the amount of points they have is astronomical. I'm like, you should just vacation for the next 4 years. Like, but they can go shopping with them now. I mean, it's not just limited to travel. So, so that is a huge, huge hot button. Working at an independent hotel though, where you don't have points, you then really have to know how to put some value add behind that, which, that can be a little bit tougher of a sale. But, it just depends on the salesperson you're dealing with and how good they are. So,
And how do you bring that up so that it's not overt, but it's just kind of known?
they will ask up
They
for the
will.
very upfront with it, and they'll
They
put it right in their RFP, and they will say, 10,000 points for the company, 10,000 points for the planner. And some of them are
oh,
just, they just lay it out there. And, at this point, at first I was like, wow, like that's pretty ballsy of you. Like you just asked for it and your company's okay with it. So whatever. But then some of them don't, and then that's when you have to, that's during
hint.
your sales, what's important to you, and
Yeah.
then they'll tell you. And if that's one of the things, then that usually will be the first thing out of their mouth.
And how about, because you get points, but you also have other properties,
Yep, you can call on your buddy who's out in, Maui,
Maui.
and be like, hey, I'll trade you a certificate. So you give me a 2 weekend or 2 night stay, over a weekend, I'll give you one in Chicago. So I mean, that's also a great thing to be able to do. And that's why you don't burn bridges, because you never know who you're going to need, when you're going to need them, or for what reason. So to be able to call on, your colleagues in that manner is, to me, it's invaluable.
And I got to believe that prioritizing these opportunities must be a challenge, because I'm sure you get high seasons
Yeah.
probably at the beginning of the year with all the kickoff meetings and trade
Yeah.
shows and stuff.
It's, in Chicago, in particular, it's, there's convention season. Moving forward, I don't know what the world's going to look like post COVID, because we're not going to have these huge citywides, like we did before. I mean, we would, at the most, the biggest citywide we have would, bring in 30,000 people into the city, and every hotel is sold out, so you just knew you were going to have business during those times. But nobody likes to come here in January. As I sit here, I've got almost
No,
three
it's
feet
not
of
a
snow on the ground.
destination.
Right. It's not like, yeah, let's go to Chicago in January. Nobody says that ever. So like, if you see an RFP come across for a January, February, that's when, like, I mean, that's when everybody, piles on, because that is invaluable business, because it just doesn't it just doesn't happen. And a lot of the hotels sit dead during those months. So you want to make sure that you can have your staff working too, because if I'm not selling, then my housekeeping team isn't working, my banquets team isn't working, all these people aren't working. So
Right.
I take that as personally, I don't want to see these folks, not work until, the busy season. I want to keep everybody employed all year long. So it's as good as the salesperson behind it. You don't get every RFP, and sometimes, it goes to somebody else. You can offer suggestions, but they're not always followed, and, you win some, you lose some.
And do you get unsolicited RFPs that are blind, where you've never heard of the people?
Oh yeah, yeah, we get them. I mean, there's so many avenues that planners can now send RFPs in. There's a lot of platforms that we use, online. A lot of the chains have global sales teams that
Yeah.
funnel in leads to us. And there is a certain amount of cold calling and prospecting that is required. And to me, that's where you find the business, because those are the people that have never been there, or haven't been there in 10 plus years, and that's the new business. Like, that's where you're gonna make up that differentiating factor is, all those little crumbs, well, they make bread at some point. And every team that I've had, they always roll their eyes at me when I say that, but it's true.
It's
I
true.
mean, crumbs make bread. And if you have, 50 programs, they're going to equal up to something. So, you never know. You just have to pick up the phone and call.
And is that one of your I don't know, trade secrets, but one of your magic formulas?
It's one of my like it's my that is like my sales I'm gonna say passion because that's kind of weird, but like I like to prospect. Like I love it. I find it entertaining. I find people humorous. I love getting hung up on. Like I laugh. It's just it's. I mean, nobody really hangs up these days, but they can be rude. But you never know what you're gonna find, and you don't know that you could pick up who on the other end of that phone could be your next $3 million a year client. You don't
Well,
know.
that's it. Because I got to believe, their job is kind of either real busy or not busy.
Right. Exactly.
And if
Exactly.
it's not busy, they probably want to talk about what's going on in the market.
Exactly. And if you can start your call off in the first, 20 seconds of some kind of value add to
Yeah.
them, then even if they're busy, they'll be like, okay, give me a second. Or if you can say, hey, so and so at wherever, like warm lead yourself into it, well, they're not going to be rude to somebody because you might have a common person in common. And so they'll listen to you. So it's just also a matter of knowing how to hook them in the first, couple seconds of that call.
And that's it, because a lot of it's planting seeds
Right.
as
Right.
opposed to looking for live, urgent demand.
Right. That way, maybe 2 weeks down the line, they have your name scribbled down on that piece of paper
Yeah.
and they get a need for something and they're like, oh yeah, well, I remember that she called me and, let's give her a call, see what they have to, so you just never know until you try.
And have you built that into a weekly schedule, or is it just off season that you do that? Or
To me, that is weekly.
it is
If
weekly.
you're not doing it daily, I mean, daily is, in my opinion, unrealistic. A lot of, the sales targets thing, like 40 prospecting calls, blah, 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 however. Okay, well, that's out the window because nobody can like
Do that
set
and
their
shows.
schedule, I mean, so however many you can get in that you feel good about, great. And if you get something out of it, I don't care if you do one and it turns out to be profitable, great. Or you get a lead out of it, fine. But I think it should be done weekly, I mean, maybe 1 to 2 days if you can, but if not, at least a half a day once a week.
Yeah. And how do you coach junior reps when they come in to be successful doing this?
Well, it's first teaching them that it's okay to pick up that little thing with the 9 numbers on it. And like, it's not just something you call for room service. Like it's a very different mentality because they rely so much on everything being
Email.
online and
Yeah.
social media. And well, I'm just going to send her a DM through my PM with my IM. And I'm like, I don't even know what you just said. Like, can't you just call them or go see them? So like, it's really getting down to 101 type selling. And I've it's gotten to the point where I've had a rep who never went out on a sales call, like, and I was a task force DOS at the time, so it really wasn't my team per se, but I said, you know what, take this RFP that we're working on. We took it, we went out, we bought a tray of cookies. Nobody's turning you away if you show up with food in your hand, I assure
Go
you.
figure. Yeah.
So we had a big old plate of cookies and we went over to the client's building, which was like 2 minutes away. And they're like, well, we don't have an appointment. I said, I don't care. I said, we're going to walk in, we're smiling, we're nicely dressed and we have food. Okay. So like we walked in, left our business, and like and I didn't do the talking. I said, you're doing the talking when we walk in. And she was like white. Like I swear to God, I thought she was going to pass out. But we walked in and she handled it like a rock star. And we walked out and she's like, that was awesome. And I'm like, why haven't you done that ever? Like, I don't understand. She's like, nobody showed us how. And that's what's scary, is that is not being taught into salespeople today, is how to talk to people, just like they don't teach people how to write cursive anymore. I don't even understand that. So like, it's very simple. You look somebody in the eye, have a conversation about whatever it is that you need to, and great. And now you've met. Now we have a personal connection. So
Yes.
yeah. So it's
Great.
it's it's challenging at times because the generate and I feel like I'm dating myself, but truly the generation, probably the next two below me, it's, that's just what they know. So it's getting them to
Well,
get out of that comfort zone.
plus because the meeting planners probably aren't in that generation. They're probably a little older.
Yeah. They're in, I'd say my generation plus maybe 1.5 minus about 1.5. So it's like,
Yeah,
so
it's all
some of
over the
them,
map.
it is. So some of them are like, I only want to email, and that's fine. Some people
Yeah.
are just, they don't want to deal with people, whatever. But who those people are, and like, you can just, because you'll never get a phone call from them. You will only ever get an email. Like even if the earth was falling apart, they will send you an email to let you know. They won't call you. But it's also teaching them how to read people in that way. And if you don't ever have a conversation with people, then it's going to be hard to do.
Ooh. Hey, Tracy, I really appreciate your time today. Where can
Absolutely.
people go to
Thank
connect
you
and
for
follow
having
you?
me. Thank you. Thank you. They can go to LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn, Tracy Murray. And that's it. I don't want anybody following me anywhere else. No,
Oh, we'll
I'm just
find you.
kidding. He'll find me, I'm sure.